Hello to the congregation of St John's, Princes Street in Edinburgh, and to anyone else who is watching this, you are very welcome. My name is Anthony Hammond. I am the Director of Music at St John's, and I am at the present time, as is everyone else, unable to get to my place of work to perform for you because of the situation that we are in. I thought that it was important that the liturgy at St John's and the musical program continued in whatever way we are able to do that safely during this period of isolation. So it was my thought that each week I would put together a short film of music which I might perform were I able to get to St John's to play for you on a Sunday morning. It is of course very strange to be doing this in this way. Here in the music room in my house is a very different performance environment than playing for you in church. Things sound very different, they feel very different, the atmosphere is very different. But in this most bizarre of times that we are living, I felt that it was important that this was done. So what I will be doing is I will be presenting some pieces and some improvisations and hoping that I can give a little bit of explanation as to why I would play this particular piece on this particular day, and hopefully in that way help with continuing the musical programme of St John's, which is so very important to everybody. The first piece I'm going to play for you this morning is a chorale prelude by Johann Sebastian Bach. This is the chorale prelude on Liebster Jesu, wir sind hier. This piece I have selected, this is one of Bach's most famous and beloved organ compositions. It is in no way a display piece, it's actually a very simple, meditative, quiet little piece. But I felt that in this first film, simple, meditative and quiet was a way I would like to start, because with all the chaos that's going on around us and the constant bombardment we're having with the latest figures and facts from all of our news sources, I think that we could all use a little calm right about now. The chorale prelude as a form was used by composers in the Lutheran Church in Germany as an extended introduction to a hymn. So the hymns in the Lutheran Church in Bach's time were known as chorales, and the chorale prelude was the piece that the organist played before the hymn was sung to introduce it. So in much the same way that now in the Scottish Episcopal Church we have introductions to hymns which just are there to bring the hymn to life and to remind the congregation that is about to sing it what the tune is. So these chorale preludes by the German composers function in exactly the same way. They are just more elaborate and longer, and in the case of many of Bach's examples they could be extremely long. Bach wrote chorale preludes that could run to 4 or 5 minutes easily, and I would select this piece to play at St John's on a Sunday in Lent because I think that it offers an opportunity for reflection, and it offers an opportunity for us to just take a moment to pause amidst the chaos of life and think about some of the things that are important to us, some of the things that we've been doing, some of the things that we're going to do, and just to have a beautiful piece of music like this as a meditation I think is quite powerful. piece of music which I'm going to play for you now is not a written piece of music, it's an improvisation of my own, and I do not know at this point what is about to happen. That is the art of improvisation. It is entirely spontaneously constructed. But the important thing about proper improvisation is that it needs to have structure and form, and it should be as rigorously composed as a written piece of music. You simply remove the stage of having the pencil in your hand and a piece of manuscript paper, or, as often is the case nowadays, a computer program. So this is spontaneous composition. It's something which is an art that organists have always practiced. It's a very useful thing to be able to do in the course of a church service, because many things happen in the course of a service that are impossible to time with absolute accuracy before the service happens. So, for example, there may be a period during the distribution of communion after the choir has sung its anthem where there is a need for some organ music, and nobody knows in advance exactly how long that's going to be, or maybe there is a procession from one place in the building to another, and again organ music is needed, and for the music to fit that procession precisely in terms of the amount of time it takes, improvisation is a hugely valuable art. Now, improvisation through the centuries has been practiced by all musicians, but I think in the 20th century it has been perhaps most closely associated with the organ and with the world of jazz. Improvisation in jazz is very, very well known, commonly understood as being central to the way that jazz works. But for the organ, particularly in the UK, the story of improvisation has not always been a particularly happy one. It has acquired a reputation as being the thing that organists do before services when they haven't prepared any music and they need to provide a couple of minutes of filler. And it's some slushy, wishy-washy chords and distant harmonies played very quietly. Well, that really isn't what improvisation should be about at all. When I was a student, I was lucky enough to be able to study improvisation in Paris with Naji Hakim. I used to have lessons at the Church of La Trinité. Naji Hakim was the direct successor of the Church of La Trinité to Olivier Messiaen, and was a student of Jean Langlais. So this is an art which I was able to study with one of the very, very greatest practitioners of it in our current age. And what I will do now is improvise a piece for you that is based on the text of the Psalm. Two different ways really that you can improvise liturgically. You can take a musical theme that pre-exists, or you can take an idea, a scriptural text, something like that. And the psalm that is set for Sunday the 29th in the Eucharist at St. John's is Psalm 130. Out of the depths have I called unto thee, O Lord. I think this is a very appropriate psalm. Purely coincidentally, it's a very appropriate psalm for this Sunday. So I'm going to improvise a piece for you, and I will, when you see the finished version of this film, I will have added the psalm verses to the screen as I play, so you can have a clear idea of what is in my mind at the time that I'm playing. Help perhaps to guide you through this improvisation on Psalm 130. The next piece returns us to Johann Sebastian Bach. This is his Pièce d'Orgue, the title that he gave it, French title. We don't quite know why that French title was given, but it simply translates generically as organ piece. This piece also goes frequently under the title Fantasia in G, and the catalogue number is BWV 572. This piece is a triptych in a grand scale. This is one of Bach's great organ works. The opening section is a fast, dancing, light toccata-like passage. It is a real example of the art of prestidigitation, fast finger work. It is very lightly scored. As a matter of fact, in all of the opening section, it is all in one part. Both hands play it, but there is never more than one note sounding at the same time. So it's distributed between two hands, but really it's one line of music. It's a tremendously lively, exciting, vibrant, sparkling opening, which leads into the very starkly contrasting middle section, which is scored on a massive scale. Bach, in the middle section of this piece, clearly was aiming to overwhelm the listener with the power of the organ's sound and the richness of its tone. So this is a grand fresco in the middle here, which in this version that you're going to hear me perform in a moment, I play around a little bit with some of the stops on the organ to vary that sound slightly, to give a little bit more variety to it than Bach himself would have given, but the organ on which you're going to hear it performed lends itself to that kind of treatment of the music rather better than it does to a treatment in which I try to make that instrument sound like an organ of Bach's time. So it's always my philosophy when performing to try and use the instrument as I believe the composer would have used it had he been playing that instrument, and of course that produces some different results. The final section is more in the character of the opening, so you get this sense of balance. The opening and the final section kind of bookending shorter sections, this grand chunk of music in the middle. But the final section is very much more powerful, very dramatic, and leads us to a very big and exciting conclusion to the piece. This piece I'm not playing here at this organ. The film that you're about to see was recorded some years ago at the organ in St Mary Redcliffe in Bristol. I was organ scholar of St Mary Redcliffe in Bristol while I was a student at university. I was there between 1998 and 2004, so this was an instrument that I played almost every day. It was very, very close to my heart, and I have recorded a couple of CD albums on that organ. This recording that you're about to see doesn't actually date from that time. This is from a little bit later. This was from the practice session for a recital that I was going to give in St Mary Redcliffe, so this was just an opportunity to record this wonderful piece of Bach on an instrument that is about as far removed from what we might call an authentic Bach organ as it's possible to get, but one which I believe, when played in the right way, can give new life and new excitement and a new dimension to a piece of music like this, which is able to just endlessly reinvent itself. Such is the genius of its composer. It is my intention in these films to present music which I might perform at St. John's on a Sunday morning. But I also think that with everything that is going on in the world at the moment, there is room for something a little lighter at the end of each one of the programs. So in each film I will conclude with something that is a very long way removed from anything that I would play liturgically in the church, but is an example of something else that the organ can do. I'm not going to say too much about any of these pieces. They're just pieces that I have picked purely because I think they are enjoyable and fun, and I present them entirely with the intention of putting a much needed smile on people's faces. Thank you very much for watching the film, and I hope that you will come back and watch more of these. They will be posted weekly, and in that way we can somehow musically continue working together until such time as we're all back together in the church once again.